All right, we're back, and I'm not sure where we're going with this. Are we finishing up with Austin, or are we jumping over to? No.
I mean, we
No,
can
Well, I guess that answers
Warren's
that.
turn.
we can we can argue about Carson Wentz some more, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
He's a brat. Jacob
Just
Eason's our starting
gonna go in
quarterback.
circles like the Ben Roethlisberger debate, which we still have to redo. Maybe that's what I'll bring up tonight instead of free agents.
Let's not do that tonight.
I'm so tired.
Wait, wait. Can I say Jacob Eason's our starting quarterback?
You can say whatever you
Yeah,
want. It
Jacob
doesn't make
Eason's
it
our
true.
starting quarterback. Carson Wentz is getting cut. Heard it here first.
So
You gave up a third and a second just to cut him a week later.
Yeah, we're going to ruin him.
all right. Well, on that note, thank you, Mr. Ballard, for your time.
We'll trade him for Gilmore.
Your alter ego, Austin. Thank you for your time as well. Over to Houston with Mr. Nick Caserio. And
Okay, I would like to first state
hey, hold on. Before you get started, I'm going to lead with a question so you can't beat me to this.
I also have a question.
Assuming you don't get an offer that you can't refuse for Watson and he does end up missing games or sitting out the entire season, do you have a backup plan at the quarterback position?
Deshaun Watson is our quarterback.
Or do you plan on being willfully ignorant and not addressing the very real possibility that regardless of...
I'm going to follow in the shoes of the GM before me and be woefully ignorant and say that Deshaun Watson is our quarterback.
Yes, but I piggyback off that. What are you going to do? Are you going to bring in competition in case, worst case scenario, he misses games?
We will re-sign our backup and bring in good old Josh McCown.
I have a question.
Josh McCown retired.
Well, then we'll coax him out.
So
We'll Vinny Testaverde him.
So you were one of the Pats GMs for 18 years. So Stephon Gilmore for Watson.
Absolutely.
No.
So
I'll give you a second round pick. That's what DeAndre Hopkins worth.
We're not even going to let you talk because we're just going to ask about Watson 100 million times. But
you get Tom Brady, we'll trade you Watson for Tom Brady.
What is an offer you couldn't refuse for Deshaun Watson? Give me an offer that's too good to pass up.
5 firsts.
Are you even like
we can only trade 3 firsts at a time?
So say the Panthers pick
up. No, if the team has enough of them in 1 year.
You can only trade 3 years out. That's what it is.
So you have 2, 1 year, 2 another year, and 1 a third year.
A team calls and says we're interested in Watson. Are you just hanging up on them, or are you even entertaining the call?
We are not fielding calls right now. Deshaun Watson is the quarterback of the Houston Texans.
So, what did you see in David Johnson that made you want to extend him?
Can I play the Austin split personalities?
Well, let's play the GM role, and then go ahead.
So, David Johnson had a rough go about it.
Warren's getting a.
I'm already getting trade calls. Call. So here's how I handle trade calls.
And nope.
When Carson Wentz.
So Deshaun I got Deshaun Watson on the brain now because that's what I'm getting. So David Johnson had a rough go at it at the end of his career in Arizona. The coaching was subpar there, leading obviously to the firing there and Cliff Kingsbury coming in. So we believe that with the right pieces and fortifying our offensive line, that he can return to his pre-injury form and be successful. So seeing that potential, we decided to extend him. Now,
I'm going to ask you another question. Oh, go ahead. Step out first.
Stepping out, I think David Johnson's a terrible player, and I think that it was a Bill O'Brien move to re-sign him. They should have cut him instead.
So
save the salary cap.
I'm going to ask you, Deshaun Watson's been getting killed. You've got no offensive line. Are you finally going to build the line and try and coax Watson with that? Or what are you going to do to lure Deshaun Watson? Are you going to build up at the receiver spot? Are you going to build up at the offensive line spot? What are you going to do to convince him to stay?
So I think that our receiving core is, after looking at it, so stepping out for a second, after looking at it closer, the receivers were a little better than I initially thought. Stepping back in the GM, so we have some decent receivers. If we can re-sign Will Fuller, especially, then I think that our receiving core isn't so bad. Obviously, Deshaun led the league in passing.
It's Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller and who else?
Kiki Kotri.
Who else is here? Is that it?
No, that's not it. They had others, and I'm drawing a blank right now.
Yeah, we had another one. Deshaun led the league in passing yards last year, so our receiving core is good enough. Will is gonna miss less games to suspension next year than he did this past year. He missed four or six, and he's gonna miss two to start the year
He
next
missed
year.
4 and then 2 to start the next.
So he's going to miss less time. We want to build an offensive line. We think if we can build an offensive line, we re-sign David Johnson, we get Will Fuller back, we start to put some pieces around him that he'll see, hey, we are committed to trying to build around him, and hopefully we can mend the broken relationship that is there with him.
Let me ask you a question on the offensive line, Mr. Caserio. If you want to coax your quarterback into reporting to your team for the season, why the hell you got a starting center?
So
I have a question before you answer that. Why did you sign the Seahawks center when everyone said he was trash? You just like trash?
Do you like trash? That's a good question.
You're the trash man.
That was Bill O'Brien's trading strategy, but that is not ours. We are trying to cover picks after the Bill O'Brien trades.
So why did you cut your center though?
So there
and
are
sign an inferior center.
Like for more money. You signed him for more money.
And he's an inferior center to the one you already had.
Why do you hate Deshaun Watson?
Okay, split answers as the GM. So we feel that the center in Seattle had a little bit of a rough go. So we feel that
the worst offensive line in football is Seattle.
With the right system in place, we feel that he can be successful. With Deshaun's ability to scramble, we feel like that takes a little pressure off the middle.
Russell Wilson can scramble.
And he hated it.
Hey, don't interrupt my generic GM answer, and then I will give you the real answer.
On to Cincinnati.
Okay, moving on to the actual answer. It's a stupid move, and Houston no idea what they're doing. They are going to have to trade Watson because they're just he's not going to report.
I got another question for you, Mr. Texans GM. With how you're handling Deshaun Watson and how players are leaving, DeAndre Hopkins, we're talking about J.J. Watt. Andre Johnson has come out and spoke negatively about the team. With such negative publicity and negative stigma, how do you get free agents to want to come to Houston?
The first step that we're going to do is try to stress that both myself and head coach David Cooley were not on the roster or not part of the regime for any of those previous players.
Yeah, so okay, you're on the regime now, so I'm asking you that question.
You're on the regime now, and you've made some horrible moves so far. So why does it get any better?
You got an inferior center for more money. I mean, what could be more Bill O'Brien than that?
The roster
How are you better than Butchin? Answer the question.
We believe in the players that we have signed and that we have added to the roster.
Don't.
We believe that these players with the right scheme and a fresh start can be successful. In our defense, at least we didn't trade for Carson Wentz. Moving on, though.
But
if you lose Watson, you wish you had Carson Wentz. Who the hell are you going to get to play quarterback for you?
Deshaun Watson, he's our quarterback.
No, it's not gonna happen.
The center from Seattle is now our quarterback.
I mean, realistically, you had him and AJ McCarron, and AJ McCarron's a free agent too. Like, who is going to play quarterback? We will try to
re-sign AJ McCarron as well, so we have a
mama.
Okay, we want our mama right now too.
I hear Stephon Gilmore can play quarterback.
We will trade him then.
Deshaun Watson for Stephon Gilmore? That's what I heard. Write it down.
No, that is not what I said. Hey, so for this one, I'm going to step more out of the GM role because there's a lot of.
We haven't even let you talk because what are your free agent targets? What do you want to do in free agency?
So the first thing I would like to do as GM is to not field questions about Deshaun Watson.
That's too bad.
I haven't
Austin, put your hand down about Deshaun Watson. I don't
Deshaun Watson at all.
I'm being realistic though.
Use the mute privilege in a minute.
Why do you hate an 11th overall pick from the 2017 draft?
What I want to know is realistically, and this is an honest question. Realistically, you have to anticipate that he's not going to play, right? I mean, you have to anticipate that he could hold out. what is your contingency plan? I mean, that's a fair question. What is the contingency plan?
So contingency, we do have AJ McCarron as a free agent. We could look to bring him in. We could look to sign a veteran journeyman, somebody like a Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Andy Dalton, somebody that could come in and bridge that gap if we're in a position where Deshaun refuses to play. Ideally, we get Deshaun to play. The other fear is that Deshaun plays enough games to count the year and then sits out the rest.
Do you think that's overly optimistic that you're going to get him to play, though?
We're hoping that with an off season and more than just the initial, we're hoping that once this initial reaction to some of the moves prior to my arrival,
And
that he'll.
Let me ask you a question about your coaching hire. Why did you hire a passing game coordinator from the worst offenses in the NFL ever when he was there? And expect him to keep Deshaun Watson.
I can answer this.
Cooley came from Baltimore, correct?
Yes, they had the worst passing game in the NFL.
Because Lamar Jackson's probably the least accurate starting quarterback in the league, so we feel like
but he's
going to be more accurate.
He was in Kansas City the year that wide receivers had 0 touchdowns for Kansas City that whole season.
You had one number 3 wide receiver on that team, though.
But no touchdowns. I've seen worse receiving corps have touchdowns.
Who was our quarterback that year? Because I don't even know.
Matt Castle, I believe.
It was Matt Castle. I'm pretty sure.
There you go. Matt Castle and no receivers.
Matt Castle threw to nobody in New England and won 11 games. So
yeah, but a lot of players have looked good in the New England system and then not elsewhere.
I'm gonna take some pressure off Mr. Caserio here and give him an answer to that question. He had no other options at head coach. No one wanted the job.
I would agree.
Unfortunately, it is not the most desirable location right now, and we hope that we're able to turn that around.
So giving you a couple of minutes to speak outside of Watson, what is the game plan in Houston outside of the whole Deshaun Watson situation? How do you switch gears and turn that noise off to focus on your needs?
So the first is we address the salary cap, and I'm going to be very honest. I looked at 4 sites and I saw 4 different salary cap numbers. I saw everything ranging from $9 million in the hole to 33 above or under the cap. So I have no idea where my cap number is. I'm going to be very honest because
I've seen 33 above.
I've seen 4 numbers. One was 9 over, one was 33 under, one was 16 under. Like I have no idea where that cap number is.
I see it. I've seen 2 sites today that say about 16 over. Not over, it's under. So you have 16 million.
Okay, I've seen that twice. So we'll go with that. We'll assume I'm 16 under. So we have a couple of players that we could cut if we need to free up some cap space. Unfortunately, we are a little bare on the draft capital, courtesy of some of the trades that Bill O'Brien made. So we are going to try to use what we can, and instead of cuts, we might try to move some players for some draft picks, even if we have to kind of oversell them a little bit and take a slightly lesser draft stock. If we
call this what this is this a rebuild? Or are you in the midst of a rebuild?
If Deshaun comes back and reports, I don't think so. I think that we can build around him and be successful. If we are forced to play without Deshaun, then we do shift into more of a rebuild mode because
how are you going to improve from that 4-12 team with Deshaun last year and JJ Watt?
Well, for starters, we're going to have better coaching. Bill O'Brien had lost that locker room. He had lost that team. There was a lot of dissension with him from some of the trades he had made. I know Deshaun was already unhappy with him after DeAndre Hopkins was moved. JJ Watt was obviously not happy with what was going on there. A lot of players have not been happy with Coach O'Brien. So we're hoping with a new coach, we're going to have a better scheme in place that's going to be more tuned to the players that we are putting out on the field, and that we'll be able to improve from that roster point. We're going to address some of our needs this offseason. We want to bolster the offensive line, give hopefully Deshaun a little bit more time in the backfield, hopefully open up some more running lanes for David Johnson. If we can keep that receiving core intact, that's going to give us a solid receiving core. Are we top in the league? No, but we're certainly not bottom. We're not a team like the Dolphins or the Patriots where the receiving core is a definite area of concern. We need to address the defensive end. We lost, obviously, one of the better edge rushers in JJ. So we want to definitely make sure that we can address that and refill that position. We really need a guard. We need a cornerback. We
maybe.
have some needs. You know, we were a 4-win team last year, and 4-win
So,
teams have lots of needs.
I have
So
a
we have,
I have a
question. It's not directly about Deshaun Watson, but so with that noise, right, and him speaking out against the organization and people coming to his aid, current players, past players, are you willing to overpay now? Because you're going to have to overpay to bring in free agents, or do you try to recoup draft capital and build through the draft? Like, how are you going to deal with that noise while trying to lure free agents?
we're going to look at the draft. I think right now we're going to try to move some players. We're going to try to get some draft capital for some of those players and use the draft to build up a young core. It also sets us up for some future success. We can do a system similar to what Buffalo and Miami have done, where they have used the draft, built a young core. They have a young, solid core in both those teams that are going to be successful for years to come. And because we don't have a ton of salary cap space, because we're not the most desirable location right now, self-admittedly, we're going to use the draft to try to help to set ourselves up for more success in the future.
So, do you think that noise is going to affect your ability to effectively build a team that can compete?
I hope not. I think it depends how much noise happens.
It's already pretty significant. It's only going to get worse.
The noise is very prototypical when there's an unhappy marquee player. There's a lot of noise that goes on about it. You know, Seattle right now is fielding a lot of similar noise.
I was going to
over
tell you,
Russell
you're
Wilson.
lucky that Russell Wilson thing happened because it took the attention away
So
from
that is
Deshaun a little
taking
bit.
some heat. So, you know, Deshaun has actually been less directly vocal than Russell Wilson has, I think. There's been news from his camp, but Deshaun's really only made 1 or 2 comments. And unfortunately, we haven't really been able to speak with him yet. We're still hoping that he'll, you know, field some of our calls and meet
I
with
heard
us.
that
and-
he spoke with Coach Cully last week and told him that he is not going to play for Houston again.
Yeah, he straight up.
Yes, so it was a very short conversation. We're hoping to have a conversation where we can have a little bit of dialogue and attempt to mend that relationship and begin a process towards trying to hopefully convince him to rejoin the team and suit up for us.
Why should he talk?
So, do you're basically telling me that he's doing to you what you're doing to teams trying to trade for him. So, how do you like the feeling of not having the phone answered?
Well, the
It's a good question.
difference there is that
You
I myself was not part of the large portion of what
Let me-
upset Deshaun.
let me
Deshaun
ask
is still
you,
a player under
let me ask
contract
you a
for our
blunt
roster.
A blunt question. How does it feel to know that you're the reason that he wants out? Your hiring is what sparked the whole trade me now situation. How does
So
it make you feel?
I'm gonna say that it's not me directly. And while yes, my hiring was a process, it was a cumulative building point. And the fact that he was not consulted upon the hiring process was the biggest straw there, not me per se. So, well, yes, they're not consulting, but had they consulted with him and he had said yes, or they had told him, that might not, we might not be in the position. So he clearly had some other options in mind, but it was more the lack of communication from ownership's part as opposed to directly myself.
My last question before we potentially maybe move on. I'm gonna say this. In your interview process, right? When they hired you, do you believe that they told you that you have to keep Deshaun? Is that why you're not fielding calls? Is that why you're steadfast? Like, do you feel like that was what you were brought in for, is to make him want to play for Houston? Is that what you feel your job is?
Yeah, I'm going to step out of GM on that one because I feel like if I answer that as a GM, I'm going to give a very generic GM answer that's going to be very boring and blah, blah, blah. But I think that might actually be spot on. Hadn't thought about that until you just asked that. But a lot of sensitive, they said, listen, one of the things you have to do is you have to get Deshaun on the field and get him into the locker room would be a factor because right now they should be listening to trade offers. Like they are gonna shoot themselves in the foot if they don't move Watson, because right now they're
because they're gonna have to take way less.
they're gonna either lose a bunch of draft stock for him when he sits out this year, or he plays whatever the minimum games are, then sits out the rest to count the year. It still cripples his draft stock. So now they get even less. And right now, they're what I personally think, and I've said this in our group chat, but they are now trying to make up for every bad trade that Bill O'Brien made in his tenure in one trade. And the problem is, you can't make up for all those bad trades in one trade. I don't care if it's Deshaun Watson. I don't care if it's Patrick Mahomes. You can't make up all of that bad
They
trading.
gave up like 3 firsts for Tunsil and Kenny Stills, and they gave away Hopkins for David Johnson.
And Miami very much appreciated that trade, which is why Tunsil was not part of the rebuild trading. But when Houston called and made that offer, that was an offer that was too good to refuse. So Miami was literally, Coach Flo called Tunsil into the office and said, "What would you do?" And he said, "Coach, you got to trade me." Like, so Tunsil told Flo to pull the trigger on the trade. So, but going back to Houston, I think that they should trade him. I'm thinking, especially if Russell does get traded, that might put more pressure on Houston that, listen, they got to get something over nothing.
But I think we got to let Jacksonville talk. But I got one more. So this is kind of a statement.
I still have.
Do you think that they're waiting for Russell Wilson to get moved or another marquee quarterback now to see what? My question is, do you think Deshaun Watson is worth more than Russell Wilson at this point in their careers? Do you think that whatever Russell Wilson gets for Seattle, you could get more for Watson?
Yes, because Watson is 7 years younger.
And already better than mine, in most people's opinions. Like he had an MVP season on a shitty team.
And I wanted to dive into this a little bit, Russell Wilson.
And he can.
Well, if you want, you can ridicule me when I take the Seahawks next on Sunday. So
we will.
What the Russell Wilson thing is, I hear it's. I'll let you talk first, Cody. Go ahead.
I had another question too, but as on this point where Warren has drawn the best GM roles to get ridiculed.
He has. We've been dogging him this whole time.
Hey, listen, my thing is, I have no quarterback controversy in Kansas City.
You think Chad is running for that starter spot?
The Russell Wilson thing, it sounds like Russell Wilson's fault because from what I'm understanding, Russell Wilson asked for more say. He asked for a bigger role in the offense. They were a run-first team. He asked them to give him the play-calling abilities and more. He did it, and he sputtered, and he was terrible the second half of the season. Awful.
The worst part about that is teams went to cover 2, and he couldn't beat cover 2.
And the thing is, he says he's a top 5 quarterback of all time. I know you got to be confident in yourself, but not that confident.
He's top 8 active.
Yes, I would place him in the top 8 active right now, but not all time. I think there's more than 5 quarterbacks playing right now who are better all time than he is.
Yeah, I like Russell Wilson, but he needs the running game and he doesn't want to admit it.
And leading into what we discussed about Big Ben earlier, Big Ben is better all time than Russell Wilson.
Did someone argue?
On the field or off the field?
On the field. We're not going to talk about off the field right now, but on the field is.
One's a stand-up guy and one should be in prison, so that's an easy one.
Off the field, I mean, Russell Wilson just won Walter Payton Man of the Year, so I don't think Ben has even sniffed that award.
He immediately started bitching.
The thing is, like, Russell Wilson,
offensive line, I should be him. And then
this is the difference between Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. And I have more respect for Deshaun Watson now because Russell Wilson just, like you said, he's just bitching. Like, it's everybody's fault but mine. Deshaun Watson, he's not talking to the media. He's not making it a circus. He's just like, I don't want to play here anymore. He's not like blaming everybody or saying you did this or your offensive line sucks, your play calling sucks.
No, he made it very clear he was, why he was unhappy. He didn't like slander. He just said, hey, I was told I would be included in hiring conversations. I wasn't. I don't like the direction that the team is headed. It was some of the
and he's got a legitimate beef.
Culture. He didn't turn it into this complaining fest. He just made it a point and then he didn't talk.
I honestly don't think Russell Wilson has a legitimate beef. They gave him what he wanted. They gave him a chance to run the offense.
And then he turned.
And he didn't do it.
Then he had a 2-game stretch where he had 7 turnovers against cover 2.
Yeah, Buffalo. He like threw 3 or 4 picks in that game. Like I know they scored 30 points, but they gave up like 40. But like he threw 3 interceptions late in the game in the fourth quarter. Like I don't think he was very good down the stretch. So like you can't blame Pete Carroll when he gave you what you wanted and you failed.
I just think he kind of hurt himself in that situation because he kind of made it known that I need to be a run first guy and go off the run. I think he's mad about that a little bit.
Which is what he needs to do. I mean, what's wrong with that? There's quarterbacks who are better in RPOs and play action. That's a thing. I mean, there's quarterbacks who excel at that kind of stuff.
So my theory is he's got someone in his ear saying how good he is, and he's starting to buy into how good this person says he is.
Yeah, I mean, to tell your owners that you're top 5 all time. I mean,
that's ballsy.
Yeah, and then he blamed Pete Carroll for being not even a top 10 passing offense last year when it wasn't Pete Carroll's fault.
And you know,
your Hall of
I
Fame.
will blame Pete Carroll for losing the Super Bowl though.
Yeah, I mean that's different.
Everybody likes DK Metcalf. I mean, he's good and he could develop, but he's just not as good as what he should be.
He's super big though.
Really good at chasing down safeties from the opposite side of the field.
He's super athletic though. He's super big.
Yeah, that's what he has going for him. But like, he doesn't run his routes very well, and like that's been my giant.
My thing is, why do you think he fell to the end of the second round? Everybody knew, and I told everybody coming out, he is not a good route runner. He loses concentration coming back to the ball, and he's not really good at it. I mean, he has to beat you over the top. I mean, or he's not going to catch it.
Second most offensive pass interference calls in college, like up to that point.
Like the size of that guy, like he should be virtually uncoverable, and he's not.
I agree with you completely. I just think like, as far as Russell Wilson goes, and I know we kind of switch gears completely here, but that's okay. As far as Russell Wilson goes,
one more thing on Watson, and then we can move on.
He like completely, in my opinion, killed his value, and he's continuing to kill it every day.
By just talking shit about your team.
Yeah, by just opening his mouth and running it. And I think, to Cody's point, that he's dead on. I think somebody's in his ear telling him to do this, telling them that he's better than he is, and telling him that it's everybody else's fault. And sometimes it's hard to turn off the noise, but I mean, he's got to look at himself in the mirror and say, hey, I was given an opportunity and I failed. It's my fault.
Oh, so one last thing about Russell Wilson before you finish, Warren. I think the biggest problem with Russell Wilson is that he opened his mouth to the wrong people. Like, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning bitched their last year when they were with that team. Like, Peyton Manning was pissed off that the Colts got rid of him after what he did for him. Brady bitched.
He had a legitimate beef, though. The Colts fucked him.
Yeah, Brady bitched nonstop about the Patriots not having weapons. But did they tell anyone to the public? Did they tell anyone they didn't trust? Like, Russell Wilson told his quarterback coach and then told other people and then told his agent, be like, hey, tell the Seahawks and the rest of the NFL I'd go to these 4 teams.
There's snitches everywhere.
I mean, he has leverage like Deshaun Watson because he has a no-trade clause. People will give up multiple firsts for him. I just don't see it. I
just don't think they should. Like,
I don't think the Bears are. I mean, they're better with him because they don't have a quarterback. But I just, without a good running game, without a good offensive line.
Hey, David Montgomery is a very underrated back. He went over.
No, I mean he's good. He's good, but that offensive line there is just as bad as Seattle. Why does he want to go to a team with the same situation, a good running game with a terrible offensive line?
That's what I literally sent when he was like, I like their emerging offensive line. What emerging offensive line?
They're terrible.
I will.
Not to mention, you're then going into a division where you're now competing with Aaron Rodgers right now. So, like, is that really where you want to go? Like,
we might as well talk about this for
Rodgers is probably
this video's almost
2
over.
years, but
I can run through.
We'll do another one for Jacksonville. So I will finish the Houston with stepping out of GM's shoes to say that if a trade happens, which I think should, and it is not coming from a point of fandom because I'm not sure I want that trade to happen, but I do think it ends up being Miami. I think it's Miami for 2 reasons. One, Carolina can't do it without giving up McCaffrey and selling the farm.
They want to, and they're willing to.
And I know they want to, but I don't know that seeing the trade package, Deshaun will okay that trade after seeing the cupboards empty. Miami is the only team that can make that trade and still put a potentially better product on the field next year.
Well, see,
You can put Xavier Howard may end up in that trade because he's grumbling for a new contract after one good year.
I don't
So they
think
get
so,
their-
but Miami's not better offensively than Carolina is right now. I mean, no
but
offense to you, but they don't have many
Oh,
weapons. They don't have better
defensively,
weapons.
we are night and day better. And
But
when you
He
trade
doesn't-
away Christian McCaffrey and you trade away
Yeah, but that
however many other
defense, that
pieces,
defense in Carolina is so young, and they're up and coming. They drafted all defense last year, and
So
they're
was
working on
Miami.
it. Yeah, but I
So-
mean, we're comparing.
here's
But Russell Wilson wants offense. He wants weapons.
I'm
Miami
not
doesn't
talking
have
Russell
weapons.
Wilson. I'm talking Watson.
Oh, sorry. I'm talking Watson too. I just said the wrong name. Watson wants weapons. He wants receivers. He wants good offensive line play. I mean, those things. No offense, they're not in Miami right now. Miami still has to work on that line. They still have to bring in weapons. Carolina's line played well last year. They have DJ Moore. He's better than anybody on Miami's team, and he's
Assuming that it doesn't take Moore and McCaffrey to get him.
it's not going to be Moore. They're not going to trade DJ Moore. It's going to probably be like Robbie Anderson and McCaffrey, or a defensive starter in McCaffrey.
so
Again, I'm not
Yeah,
saying I
but I
want
think-
that trade because I don't want to give up the farm, but I'm saying I think Miami is the team that can
Dra-
absorb that
draft-
trade due to
draft
their draft
capital
capital.
wise, Miami's in the best position because they might not have to give up as much with having that third overall pick.
But
Because
to me,
And they can give up that third pick and
Jets-
still win the Laramie
I
Tunsil
honestly
trade.
think the
So
Jets
it's
are.
almost a free pick in there.
So I'm going to say this as a Bills fan. I want the Dolphins to do this, or the Jets. It cripples them as far as their draft. I think that it
Does it
cripples
cripple
them.
Miami that bad?
I think you're
Miami,
absolutely wrong, because you have so many holes to fill in the first 2 rounds of this draft. If you give up your first round picks this year and next year, which is what it'll take, and you're going to have to give up players. Like, we're talking about a top rated defense. You're talking about giving up your best corner. I mean, you don't have anybody to replace Xavier Howard right now. You're going to have to give up somebody else too. I mean, you're going to have to give up 2 players at least. Then you have to give up your first round picks this year and your first round picks last year, potentially other picks. I don't know what it'll end up being. You have Miami's not a Deshaun Watson away from a Super Bowl, and I think that trade would hurt them more than help them. And I'm it's not that I think that Miami is better off, and they're going to be contenders in the near future. But I think Miami is better off staying the course. I think
I'm not disagreeing with
I think
that.
the-
I'm
I think the
saying
Jets are
Miami
better
is
off
the
too.
best. Miami is the best equipped to absorb that trade from any of those 3 teams, between Carolina, the Jets, and the Dolphins.
so. I think that they're. I'm not
The
disagreeing that
Dolphins
they're
won
most
more
equipped.
games than the Panthers and Jets combined.
And I'm not saying they're not more equipped to handle the trade. All I'm saying is that it's not what's best for Miami as a
Well,
team.
I'm not arguing that.
And that's the same thing with the Jets. The Jets will absolutely cripple themselves if they make this trade, because they're not even close to ready. They've
No.
got to do Marcus May's contract. They got to solidify that defense. They've got holes all over that defense. They need another receiver. They need more offensive line help. They need a running back. The Jets have nothing. I don't even know why Deshaun Watson wants to go there other than Robert Saleh. I think the best
He didn't, right?
position, I think the best team for Watson would be Carolina, because one, they don't have 2 firsts. They're not, they're giving up a first for the next 3 years, but they still keep their seconds. They still have
So
good
they are
core.
neutering their draft class for the next 3 years.
Yeah, but they have pieces that they're not going to have to give up. Miami and the Jets need pieces on offense. We've agreed on that. They need receiver help. They need a running back, Miami and the Jets. But Carolina doesn't need those things. If they trade-
Carolina will, because they're not
Hold
going to
on.
have McCaffrey.
If they trade McCaffrey, they can bring in Mike Davis back. He played well. He played really well last year when McCaffrey was out. They could bring in. They have DJ Moore, who's better, like I said, better receiver than anybody on the Jets or the Dolphins right now, before free agency, before they bring in whoever they're going to bring in. And they can re-sign Curtis Samuel, who's a dangerous, he's a guy a jack of all trades who they want to bring back. I feel like if they give up Robbie Anderson and Christian McCaffrey, it's not going to cripple them. I just feel like they're in a better position because they're in a division where teams are starting to decline. No offense, but Tampa Bay is, Austin said, building for 2 years, and then they're going to probably deteriorate. The Saints, have an old quarterback who is already deteriorating. The Saints are already deteriorating. They're 70 million over the cap, and the Falcons are terrible. So
I
they're
believe
not-
it was 66.
whatever it is, but they're deteriorating. The Tampa Bay Bucks are building for 2 years, and then they're going to fall apart. And the Falcons are terrible. That division is wide open.
In 5 years, I think the Panthers will literally be the best team in the NFC South, and it won't
And
be close.
even if he comes to the AFC East, Deshaun Watson, it'll be fun. But I still think that we're the best team in the AFC East. And
I think you should go.
That's blind homerism there.
it's not blind homerism. Like, I don't think any team is. And this is, like I said, I'm not saying they're not going to build. I'm not saying that they're not going to be as good. I'm talking about right now. I don't think that the teams are built from top to bottom as good as the Bills, the Dolphins, or the Jets, or the Patriots for that matter. From top to bottom, the Bills have the best roster in that division. I mean,
Well, the Patriots were playing with high school wide receivers, so I can give you that one.
the Jets
Can
Jets
Stephon
receiving
Gilmore play
core,
wide receiver?
he could, I guess. But the Jets core is young, but they could be good. I like Denzel Mims a lot, but I've got to see him play because he only played like 5 games last year. Miami needs to get a true number 1 outside of Devontae Parker first.
I mean, Miami's got the best tight end in the AFC East.
It depends. I mean, it took him. We gave him 3 or 4 years to develop. I think Dawson Knox has that big playability. He's just got to learn to concentrate on the shorter routes.
But right now, Gesicki is the best tight end in the AFC East.
Right now, yeah, I mean that's fair. But the best offensive line, Buffalo. The best running backs in the division, Buffalo.
Like, listen,
Best receivers.
That was hilarious, Jeremy. I'm sorry. That was hilarious. Warren's like, right now, we have the best tight end. You're like, right now?
No.
I mean, I get
I
it
don't wanna
because like you
say it,
self-admitted you hate the Dolphins, so you kind of like I get that.
No,
there's like
I just
a bias.
think like it's not a bias. The Dolphins
It is a bias because you're a
are
Bills
going to
fan.
be, but the
It is
Dolphins.
because every time I mention a Dolphins player, I get, well, the 2 games against the Bills they did bad, so they suck. Like
No, I never.
Xavier Howard
That's not
was
what I
bad
said.
because he got burned in 2 games against the
That's
Bills.
not-
Like it's
No, that's
happened
not-
a bunch of times.
That's not what I said. I think you're taking what I'm saying out of context a little bit. What I'm saying
I don't know.
is,
The laughing is telling me otherwise from the other guys.
what I'm saying is this:
It's like an old married couple right now.
Yeah,
The
you guys
Dolphins-
spend way more than us.
He never listens to me.
well, what I said rings true. The Bills swept the Dolphins, right? They swept the Jets. They swept the Patriots. So to say that they're the best team in the division is factual. Like it's absolutely factual.
That
you
was
go- When you go
that
6-0
was
in
not
the
what I
division,
said.
when you go 6-0 in the division, that's a fact. You're the best team in the division. That's a fact.
Yeah, that's not what I said. Though what I said was you have a tendency to bash the other players in the division, and you use they did bad against your team, so the player is bad.
The Saints went 6-0,
I-
and then they lost.
I never said that Xavier Howard was bad. I said the times I got to see him, he didn't play well. That's what I mean. You're taking what I said out of context. I didn't say he was terrible. I literally said when I saw him play, he didn't play well. That's what I said.
We're on the AFC South today, not the AFC East. We did that a few
Yes, we did.
episodes
We
ago.
did.
Big
We did
Ben's
that a
not
few
a first
episodes
ballot
ago.
Hall of Famer now.
But-
Gotta get this shit back on track. I'm a terrible host.
I know you're letting us just say whatever we want about whatever division we want, but
Carson Wentz.
I just feel
I
like
think we spent about 7 minutes on the AFC East. We spent about 12 minutes on the AFC West with Seattle.
we talked about Seattle and the Dolphins. I'll give you this.
10 Deshaun
have-
Watson
I
question.
have bias, but I do think the Dolphins are up and coming. I do think that they will compete soon. I don't think that they're as bad as the Jets or the Patriots.
And time.
I think the Dolphins are 2 years away. I think one more year. I think they have to add a couple pieces this year and a couple of pieces next year, and I